Well, I'm gonna have you do first. Just say your name, age, and how many years you've lived in North Brookfield.
Okay. My name is John J. Lane II. I was born here in North Brookfield the 1st of April, 1931, and I lived in the town all my life except for the 4 years that I was in the U.S. Air Force.
Okay. And the next question. Another thing that I had to make clear to the last person I interviewed is when because I'm going to be cutting my voice out of the final
Oh, yes.
film.
Yeah.
When I ask a question, and you've done this already, but just make sure to kind of like restate the question. Like if I say, "What's your favorite experience?" It's like my favorite experience was kind of thing, and don't just jump into it. Otherwise, people don't know what you're talking about. But all right. So when did your family originally settle in North Brookfield, and what brought them to the town?
My, my ancestors first came to North Brookfield in 1812, and they came from Bedford, Mass. And the story goes that they were part of the original people who fought in the Revolution. Yeah, I don't know what caused them to North Brookfield, but I do believe that including two beyond my generation, I think there are 9 generations of Lanes here in North Brookfield.
That's cool. All right. Yeah, this one that you might have to think about. But out of all of your years living here, what was the most important event that you've experienced? And by important, I mean like stuff that hasn't just affected you, but more or less the town as a whole. Like last person I interviewed brought up the hurricane of '38, which if you have any personal experience from that, feel free to explain it because it'd be nice to get multiple viewpoints on the same subject. But yeah.
Uh, During, I'll speak about the hurricane of '38. During the hurricane in 1938, my dad operated a garage on School Street, and it set back off the main street, and right next to it was a hotel and a restaurant that had a slate roof. And the slate came off that roof unbelievably. And if you'd been out in the weather and it hit you, it'd cut you right in half. And we lived on Nursery Ave, right just off the center of town. And I remember getting home, and there were 3 trees right across the road at the beginning of the street, and my neighbors had a 2 or 3 car garage on his property, and the storm took that and it dropped it off over a block away onto the common on Grove Street. And my folks had just bought that house about 2 years before, and they put awnings on canvas awnings with metal frames. They did an awful number on the house, on the windows. But that's the thing that I remember most about the hurricane of '38. It was quite an experience. During my lifetime here in Northwood, there's been many experiences that I've encountered. Probably the most rewarding experience was the time I served on the fire department. I was on the fire department for 20 years, and a good portion of that time, my father was the fire chief, and it was quite an experience to have your pa be a 2-headed boss, shall we say. And I really enjoyed that. And probably of all the things that I did in behalf of contributions to the town, the fire department was probably the best. The camaraderie that you had, and the teamwork, and all that stuff.
Now I remember reading something about I believe down near Quabog Rubber or something. There was a fire at one point. There was some sort of big fire in town. Do you remember anything about that?
Well, I got out of the service in 1952, and I went to work for my dad in the garage, and I think it was June of 1954, we had a fire in the garage. I happened to be right out in front of the garage when the fire started, and as a result of that, we purchased the property across the street from where I live, and we purchased that in July of 1954, and we were open for business on the 1st of November of 1954, with all the rules and regulations you have today with the big brother, the government as a partner. We never would have been able to do that in today's society.
Now, this is the place across the street
Yeah,
from here.
it's the animal shelter. I sold it be 2 years ago next month to the animal shelter.
And what exactly was that service there?
We had American Motors and International Houses dealership.
Oh, all right. Yeah, my mom had mentioned something like
Yeah.
that. I can't.
In addition to that, we also operated school buses here in town for, I think, from the late 40s until the late 80s. And at which time I sold the bus company to Viney's Garage in East Brookfield, who ironically just sold their business to AA Transportation. That was operating the school buses was very rewarding. Even today, I'll run across young people and say, "You don't remember me? You were my bus driver." And during that time, I probably encountered 3 generations of kids, and it was a problem. I'd be talking about their father. Oh no, that wasn't my father. That was my grandfather. That's a lot of fun.
Don't forget about the cemetery.
Oh yeah.
Been the cemetery commissioner.
You can elaborate on that if you want.
Okay. In 1970, due to a vacancy on the Board of Selectmen, I ran for selectman. I ran 3 times in 18 months. The first time I got beat by 4 votes. The second time I won by about 300 votes. The third time I got beat by another 300 votes. And after having the experience there, I said, where can I go where I can still service the town, be of service to the town, and still be part of the town? And there was an opening at the cemetery. And I've been one of the cemetery commissioners now since 1973. My dad was a cemetery commissioner back in the late 40s and early 50s.
What exactly do commissioners do?
We supervise the care of the cemeteries, and we sell lots and do all the I don't know, the nitpicking work you have to do to have everything something of which the town is very proud. And we get many compliments on the care and condition of the cemetery. Right now we're in the process of washing the stones at the cemetery in celebration for the 200th anniversary, because we would hope that we have many visitors, which would include a visit to the cemetery to visit with their parents and grandparents and siblings and whatever.
Now, when that storm hit, I think it was like last year or something,
Oh,
and
nice.
it knocked down all of those headstones. How did you go about repairing that? Or?
Well, they have a special epoxy that they use to bond it, and we were quite lucky. We only lost maybe 3 or 4 stones for repair, but in the large, we were quite fortunate because we had, this past year, we had quite an expenditure in removal of some of the old trees. And we also had the fellow that does the tree work do a lot of trimming. And that saved us an awful lot of work. Because if they hadn't been trimmed, then the ice storm would have taken them down. We did have quite a bit of damage due to the ice storm, but it would have been a lot worse if we hadn't had the foresight to trim the trees. That's one of the beautiful things about the Walnut Grove Cemetery, is it's got many, many maple trees, and it adds to the character of the cemetery. Most cemeteries you go to are just open fields. All you see is monument. The only drawback is that all of those trees are over 100 years old, and they all planted at the same time, and they all deteriorate at the same rate. So we have to be selective and pick out the worst ones. We'd like to have the money to fix them all, but in fact, just this morning, I was down talking with a gentleman whose wife passed away a couple of years ago, and he's come forward to provide us with some new growth, and I should know in a couple of weeks what arborist would recommend, because we don't want the same maples that we have, because if there's ever a blight, we lose everything. So we're looking for a variety of trees to place down there.
Now, before when I was asking you about like your experiences in North Brookfield, you kind of covered like, well, I asked what the happiest like memory was and about contributing to community, which you answered, but like something similar to the hurricane. I'm trying to see if I can get a different story from every person I interview, but is there anything like the hurricane that was significant and affected the town? It was a big significant event that happened to North Brookfield in your lifetime apart from the hurricane.
Well, I'll never forget the tornado in Worcester. It was in 1953, and I was working with a plumber at the time, and I had been to this home after dinner, and was working there all alone, and I never experienced such a very quiet. Everything seemed so still, and then when I finished the work that I was doing, I went uptown and I found that our local ambulance had gone to Worcester because there was a serious tornado, and I'll never forget that. That was quite it was a feeling that it's hard to experience, explain just what the feeling. But everything was absolutely still. No movement at all. It was like time had stopped.
What about the, I don't wanna get on there, what about the fire at the Adams Block? That was.
That's what I was thinking of. When I said there was a fire, I knew there was some sort of big fire in town. I couldn't remember what it was. That's what I was thinking of.
I was on the fire department at that time.
Oh, you were?
No.
Oh, you weren't?
Yeah.
Oh.
I got off the fire department in 1972 when I first became a selectman, because the selectman are the fire chief's boss, and it was kind of a conflict of interest. And I had been on the fire department for 20 years, and I was 42 years old, and fire service is a young man's game, and I'd had enough. I don't know how the young fellows can do it today. They have to have so much training and so much equipment. I'm glad I did it when I did it. I don't look forward to the time and effort the young people have to put in today for the fire service.
When did the Adams Block fire happen?
I don't recall. I would say it was about 15 years ago. 15, 20 years ago. So.
Oh, then that's not the one I'm thinking of. I remember that in that, or maybe it didn't even happen in your lifetime, I don't know, but I was looking through the book on the town that the historical society is selling, and they had a picture of firefighters down near what looked like Quabog rubber, and they were all pointing out this fire on the building. I really wish I could remember what the name of the fire was, but it was a black and white photo, so it wasn't recent.
There's been a number of fires in the Quabog, because when they buff the soles, it goes into a filter like, and it clogs, and sometimes the things will. We haven't had, to my knowledge, I haven't had a number of fires like we've had in the past.
What was like the biggest fire you ever fought during your time as a firefighter?
I don't. The thing I remember most of all the fires was when the St. Joseph's Church here in town caught fire. My dad and I, we were only about a block and a half away from the church, so we went and investigated before we turned the alarm in. And what my dad saw what the situation was, so he had a neighbor across the street call the fire department, and he kept the building completely closed tight, so that when the men came, he knew just where to have the men go in and fight the fire. In fact, there was more damage done to the belfry than there was to the rest, because heat rises, and it went up into the belfry, and there was very little damage done to the church overall because of my father's foresight in keeping the in 1980, I think it was 87 or 86, we had a fire here, and it was in the basement, and being an ex-fireman, I said, when we leave the house, close it up tight, and so it really saved the house. All the damage was done in the basement.
Wow.
In fact, our bedroom was off to the far, well, be far right. My wife got out of bed, and she couldn't see, and I said, well, get down on the floor and you'll be able to see fine because of the smoke.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see what else. Okay. Alright, now moving away from experience, do you like living in North Brookfield? Like, why or why not? Why did you move here? Kind of.
Well, I didn't have a choice. That's where my grandparents and my dad took roots, and I've always enjoyed living in North Brookfield. One beauty of North Brookfield compared to all the other Brookfields is the fact it's off Route 9. So you really don't have a reason to come to North Brookfield. I mean, you don't come to North Brookfield unless you have a reason. I compare it with Hardwick. Hardwick is off the beaten path too, and it's a beautiful town, but it's not a heavily traveled town because it's off of 122. And that's one of the things we enjoy about North Brookfield. And people who will come to visit, it's really nice around here. I said, sure, it's God's country.
So did you ever once, well, apart from your time in the Army, did you ever consider moving away from North Brookfield?
No.
Or no?
Well, I take that back. I had an aunt and uncle who lived just over the town line in West Brookfield. And I said, if North Brookfield would annex that property, I'd buy that property, because it was a nice big place, plenty of room, nice big garage, nice big barn. I'd be right up my alley, but I could never get the town to do that.
Yeah. Would you like to see any change in North Brookfield? If so, what would you want changed?
I'd like to see the government brought into the 21st century. There are many things that could be done to make the government much more efficient than it is today. And among them would be to merge the water department and the sewer department, which makes sense. To merge the town collector and the treasurer, which makes sense. And to have a much more equitable plan for all town employees. There's different departments are treated differently than, and that's not fair. I've always figured that I'm no better than you and you're no better than me, and we all should be treated equally. That's my
Yeah,
my thoughts about town government.
that makes sense.
So, and you know, in a small town, I've often said that town government survives in spite of itself, because there are many things that you have no control of. The government is there. I was on the housing authority when we renovated the old high school to multifamily apartments for low-income people. And
Ed is off, right?
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
you can go. Yeah.
the
I'm gonna be cutting it anyway, so
That's
I mean,
okay.
the rigmarole there was awful. The government gave you a list of architects that you could choose. Then we thought we picked the best one, and there were more change orders that you take a shake a stick at, and I think it started out about $85,000 a unit. When it got up to $100,000, I might recommend was to stop. We would tear the building down, sell a brick to each and every fellow or person who'd gone to North Brookfield High School and built from the ground up. But that didn't work. It's been quite successful, and there were some people that were against the low-income housing. And I've often said that the beauty of having something that is very nice is the ability to share it with people that deserve it. And so these people, they have an opportunity to reside in Norfolk as a result of the low-income housing. The other thing, my dad was on the housing authority when they first constructed the Elder Center up there. And the beauty part of that is it gave the elders of the town the ability to reside in the town without the burden of home ownership. And it loosened up a lot of homes to young people that made it affordable for them. That was a win-win situation when they built the senior housing on Main Street.
right. And second last question is, if you ask someone if you should move to North, if you ask someone if they should move to North, oh my god, if someone asked you if they should move to North Brookfield, what would you tell them? Yeah, I'm tongue-tied today.
I would tell them that they have a good opportunity because it is a good town with a lot of good people. And it's like anything else. It's how you contribute to the good of the town that makes it that much better. And that's what I've always tried to do is do what's right for the town.
And as like kind of a wrap-up question, this isn't really on here, but are there any like interesting personal experiences or anything that hasn't really been brought up in any sort of question that you'd like to talk about or discuss before end it?
Not really. I've people say to me that I've had kind of a hard life. My mother was only 59 when she died from cancer. My first wife was only 62 when she died from cancer. I had my oldest sister died 4 years ago from dementia, and my brother next to me, he died 2 years ago from damn cancer. And those things really bother you. There were 7 of us in our family, four girls and 3 boys, and we're down to 2 boys and 3 girls right now.
Uh,
But no, getting back to people, oh yeah, you had a tough life. I had a life that second to none. I wouldn't trade it for anything, because I had parents that really looked after me and provided me with the opportunities. They my dad would say, you know, the harder you work, the bigger reward, and that's always been my theory. And I've always enjoyed working. In fact, before you came, I was working next door, and my sister, my baby sister, who's next door. I bought that at foreclosure last fall, and she was looking for a place to live, and I said, I've got the perfect place for you. So that's another example where God's been very, very good. That opportunity opened up, and she couldn't be happy, and I couldn't be happier to have her right next door. I keep an eye on her.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At one time, all 7 of us lived within, probably not more than half a mile of 148.
Hmm.
So here, there. Well, she lived the furthest away. She lived on the Ashley Road, but and then 20 years ago, she moved to Wood Street. So we were all very, very close. I've been very involved with town affairs. Right after I got out of service, I joined the fire department. Then I was on the planning board for a number of years. I was selectman 2 different times. I was on the finance committee just once. I was on the water board for about, I'd say about 8 years. And I've been involved. I was on the Council on Aging for about 6 years. I've been around. But you get out of something what you put into it. And,
Yeah.
And that's the way I've always felt. You know, if you ever complain about the town, then the only way you can't stand on a corner and complain about it, you've got to take some action. And, you know, you win some and lose some, and I speak my mind. If it flies, it does. If it doesn't, next case.
Yeah, that's what, and last person I interviewed was Dr. Grace Street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he was saying the same thing. It's like, when I asked him about change in North Brookfield, it's like, if you want change, you go do change. You don't just sit around and like suggest that someone else change it. You go change it.
Right.
But it's great policy.
Yeah. In fact, Dr. Grace's father used to own this property where we built out. In fact, the whole area was an apple orchard, and he had a big farm where the Stats is now. There was a great big barn there.
Cool.
And as kids, we used to go skating over at the pond in back of Doctor's house. And a lot of good memories.
Yeah, they were saying something about like they always thought the barn had to do with the apple orchard when it was their property, not the father's property or whatever. But yeah, is that orchard? Does that have anything to do with Brookfield Orchards now? Or?
No,
Separate?
Dr. Grace's father just maintained the orchard here.
Oh, that's cool.
In fact, his sister, who has since passed away, dug out a cellar hole here, but never finished it. She moved 2 doors down. Dr. Grace's mother lived in the next house to my house, and then Dr. Grace's sister lived in the one, and then Dr. Grace lived where the post office is. He sold that to the company's leases to the post office.
Oh yeah, I think you mentioned something like that.
With all all in a row. In fact, back in the, I think it was mid-60s, Dr. Grace's mother owned, it was a Getty station where the car wash is, and we bought that from Mrs. Grace back in the 70s. And my brother, who's now deceased, he was a partner with me in the garage, and then when we dissolved, he took over the Getty station where he came from originally when he came back into business with me. So they had all the way from the from where the car wash is now, all the way up the street. It's all Grace's property.
Mm.
Yeah, I think Dr. Grace, he graduated in 1956. I graduated, 1946 I should say, and I graduated in 1948. We've all been friends. He used to have a couple of horses that we used to ride together, and I had a pony, and he had one horse. It was so funny. His name was Captain, and that horse was the craziest animal you ever saw. He would go along, then he would stop, and he wouldn't move. So you'd have to go around behind him and go past him, and he'd go again. That's so funny. And he had another beautiful horse. His name was Debbie. It was a Morgan horse. Beautiful, beautiful animal.
Yeah, I have a few friends who ride horses.
I have a granddaughter in California, and she's all wrapped up in horse. Yeah, when we lived right in the center of town, we had, my sister had a horse, I had a pony. And yeah, he wasn't a pony, he was a good sized pony. And I could ride him, I could drive him, I could show him, I could race him. He was the most versatile animal you could ever cross. My dad bought him I think in 1943, during the war, and we used to keep him at the right place in the center of town. We had a woodshed that we converted into a stall, and my sister had the horse and I had the pony, and we used to, with my kids, we used to peddle Sunday papers, and the pony was just like a milk wagon. He would go straight down the street, just very, very slowly, and we'd just shuttle back and forth, picking up papers off the back of the cart. Great animal, Freddie. Really loved that horse, that pony.